Every day, more than 2 billion people open their refrigerators, take out yesterday's meal, and place it in a microwave or on a stovetop without a second thought. It feels like one of the safest habits in the world. After all, if food is heated until it is steaming hot, surely it must be safe to eat. That simple belief has become part of everyday life in almost every household. Yet modern scientific research tells a far more complicated story. Hidden inside certain reheated foods are chemical changes that cannot be seen, smelled, or tasted. These reactions happen quietly at the molecular level, and while they go completely unnoticed during a meal, researchers believe they may contribute to serious long-term health problems, including cancer. Before dismissing this as another exaggerated health warning, consider one statistic that deserves your full attention. Around 1 in every 6 cancer cases worldwide is now linked to dietary and lifestyle factors. Research published in respected medical journals has consistently shown that poor eating habits rank among the most important preventable causes of cancer, second only to tobacco use. Most people immediately think about processed snacks, sugary drinks, or fast food when they hear that information. Very few ever stop to consider whether the way they store and reheat perfectly ordinary homemade meals could also play a role. Yet that is exactly what many scientists have been investigating for years. Today we are going to examine 4 foods that millions of people reheat almost every single day. They are probably sitting inside your refrigerator right now. Under certain conditions, each one can undergo scientifically documented chemical transformations during reheating that may increase exposure to compounds linked to cancer development. The 4th food is especially surprising because it is widely regarded as one of the healthiest foods you can eat. By the time you reach the end of this discussion, you may never look at leftovers the same way again. Before we explore those foods, it is important to understand what this conversation is really about. This is not a warning about a temporary stomachache or the occasional case of food poisoning. The concern is much deeper than that. Cancer is rarely caused by a single meal or a single unhealthy choice. Instead, it usually develops through years of repeated exposure to harmful influences that slowly damage cells and their genetic material. Tiny injuries accumulate over time until the body's normal repair systems can no longer keep up. Among the substances involved in this gradual process are free radicals, advanced glycation end products, nitrosamines, and compounds created through lipid oxidation. Many people assume these dangerous chemicals come only from cigarette smoke, heavy pollution, or industrial toxins. In reality, some of them can also form inside everyday foods depending on how those foods are cooked, stored, and reheated. International health organizations, including the World Health Organization, have classified several compounds produced during certain cooking and reheating processes as confirmed or probable carcinogens. A Group 1 classification means there is convincing evidence that the substance causes cancer in humans. A Group 2A classification means the evidence strongly suggests it is probably carcinogenic. These classifications are not based on speculation or internet myths. They are built upon decades of laboratory experiments, epidemiological studies, and peer-reviewed scientific research. The reactions responsible for producing these compounds occur silently every time specific foods are reheated under the wrong conditions. What makes this particularly concerning is that the people most likely to be affected are not individuals with unusual diets. They are ordinary families preparing what they believe are healthy meals consisting of rice, lean chicken, vegetables, and eggs. Ironically, these very foods form the foundation of many balanced diets around the world. Before we go any further, let me explain why I feel confident discussing this topic. In an age where health advice spreads across social media faster than scientific evidence, knowing the source of information matters more than ever. My background includes medical training focused on internal medicine, followed by advanced study in nutritional biochemistry. For more than 15 years, my work has centered on understanding how cooking techniques, food storage, heat exposure, and repeated reheating alter the chemistry of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. I have spent years examining how these molecular changes influence DNA, cellular metabolism, and long-term disease risk. Everything discussed in this video is based on findings published in respected scientific journals, including Food Chemistry, the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry, Carcinogenesis, and the Lancet Oncology. My goal is not to overwhelm you with technical language or complex biochemical formulas. Instead, I want to translate this research into practical knowledge that anyone can understand and apply. I am not trying to sell you supplements, miracle products, or expensive health programs. Preventive medicine begins with education, and sometimes the most valuable health advice has nothing to do with medication. It begins with understanding what happens to the food we place on our plates every day. The information you are about to hear could help you make smarter choices for yourself and the people you care about most. To understand why reheating certain foods may become a problem, we first need to look at what happens inside food at the microscopic level. During the initial cooking process, heat creates a series of natural chemical changes. Proteins unfold, making them easier to digest. Starches absorb water and soften through gelatinization. Fats melt and disperse, creating texture and flavor. These reactions are expected and, in most cases, completely safe. The situation changes once cooked food has been left to cool, stored in the refrigerator, and then exposed to heat for a second time. At that point, new chemical pathways begin to develop. The first process is oxidation. During refrigeration, oxygen slowly interacts with fats and proteins, making them increasingly unstable. When those already altered molecules are heated again, they break apart into highly reactive substances, such as lipid peroxides and melandialdehyde. Both compounds have been widely studied because of their ability to damage cells and interact with DNA. The second process involves something known as the Maillard reaction. This reaction is responsible for the rich aroma and golden brown color that make freshly cooked foods so appealing. However, repeated exposure to high temperatures can push this reaction too far, leading to the formation of advanced glycation end products, often called AGEs. Scientists have linked excessive AGE accumulation with chronic inflammation, a biological environment that supports the development of numerous chronic diseases, including several forms of cancer. The third process involves nitrate conversion. Certain vegetables naturally contain high levels of nitrates that are harmless and even beneficial when freshly prepared. During storage, however, naturally occurring bacteria begin converting these nitrates into nitrites. When those foods are reheated, further chemical reactions may create compounds called nitrosamines, some of the most extensively studied dietary carcinogens identified by researchers. As we move through each of the four foods, you will notice that one or more of these three mechanisms, oxidation, advanced glycation, and nitrosamine formation, appears repeatedly. Understanding these processes is the key to understanding why reheating certain leftovers deserves far more attention than it currently receives. The first food on our list is one that billions of people eat every single day: cooked rice. Across Asia, Africa, Europe, and the Americas, rice serves as a dietary staple and provides the primary source of calories for more than 3 billion people. Because it is inexpensive, versatile, and easy to prepare in large batches, leftover rice is routinely stored in refrigerators and reheated the following day. Few people ever question whether this habit carries any risk. Surprisingly, the greatest concern is not the reheating itself, but what happens during the hours between the first meal and the second. Cooked rice creates an ideal environment for a naturally occurring bacterium called Bacillus cereus. This microorganism is commonly found in uncooked rice and is capable of surviving the initial cooking process by forming highly resistant spores. Once the rice begins cooling, especially if it remains at room temperature for too long before refrigeration, these spores can become active and multiply rapidly. As they grow, the bacteria produce toxins that are remarkably resistant to heat. Even if the rice is thoroughly reheated until it is piping hot, the bacteria may die while the toxins they created remain fully active. Those toxins then pass directly into the digestive system. Although food poisoning caused by Bacillus cereus is well known, researchers have also become interested in another possible consequence. Laboratory investigations suggest that one toxin produced by this bacterium, known as cereulide, may interfere with the function of mitochondria, the tiny structures responsible for producing energy inside every cell of the body. Mitochondrial dysfunction has increasingly been recognized as one of the early biological changes associated with abnormal cellular behavior and, under certain circumstances, the development of cancer. Researchers continue to investigate this relationship, but the findings have already raised important questions about the long-term effects of repeated exposure. There is another reason reheated rice has attracted scientific attention. Every time starchy foods are exposed to high temperatures, especially during repeated heating, they have the potential to produce higher amounts of acrylamide. This chemical forms when naturally occurring sugars react with the amino acid asparagine under intense heat. The International Agency for Research on Cancer has classified acrylamide as a Group 2A probable human carcinogen because laboratory studies have shown it can damage DNA and increase cancer risk under certain conditions. While researchers continue studying the exact levels produced during different cooking methods, the evidence is strong enough that public health authorities recommend minimizing unnecessary exposure whenever possible. Fortunately, reducing the risk is straightforward. Whenever practical, prepare only the amount of rice you intend to eat immediately. If leftovers are unavoidable, cool the rice quickly by spreading it into a shallow container rather than leaving it in a large pot. Refrigerate it within 1 hour of cooking, consume it within 24 hours, and avoid reheating it more than once. These simple steps dramatically reduce bacterial growth while limiting repeated chemical changes that occur during multiple heating cycles. They may seem like small adjustments, but when repeated over years and even decades, small habits often have the greatest influence on long-term health. One of the biggest surprises in nutritional science is that the foods most people consider the healthiest are not always the safest after repeated heating. That brings us to the second food on our list, cooked chicken. Around the world, chicken has earned a reputation as the ideal source of lean protein. Doctors recommend it to patients recovering from illness, dietitians include it in balanced meal plans, athletes depend on it to build muscle, and families prepare it in large batches to save time during busy weeks. Meal prepping containers filled with grilled chicken and vegetables have become a symbol of healthy living. Yet very few people realize that the chemistry of cooked chicken begins to change the moment it is stored and then exposed to heat again. The issue is not that chicken suddenly becomes poisonous after one trip through the microwave. Rather, each additional heating cycle encourages chemical reactions that gradually produce compounds scientists have been studying for decades because of their ability to damage cells. What makes these reactions especially concerning is that they occur silently. The chicken may smell perfectly normal, taste exactly as expected, and appear completely safe, while beneath the surface its proteins and fats are undergoing significant molecular changes. When chicken is first cooked, its proteins unfold naturally, making them easier for the digestive system to break down. This is one of the normal benefits of cooking. However, after refrigeration, those proteins become more vulnerable to oxidation. Reheating accelerates this process, causing some amino acids to react in ways that generate substances known as heterocyclic amines, or HCAs. These compounds have been the subject of extensive cancer research because laboratory studies have repeatedly demonstrated their ability to interact with DNA. Once HCAs enter the body, they are processed by enzymes in the liver. During this metabolism, they can be converted into highly reactive molecules capable of attaching directly to genetic material inside cells. When DNA is repeatedly damaged and not properly repaired, mutations may accumulate. Some of these mutations affect genes responsible for controlling cell growth and preventing tumors. When those protective systems fail, the conditions become more favorable for cancer to develop. This does not mean that eating reheated chicken once will cause disease. Cancer is rarely the result of a single exposure. Instead, researchers focus on repeated, long-term contact with compounds that gradually increase cellular stress over many years. Numerous scientific investigations have explored this relationship. Studies published in respected oncology and nutrition journals have found that individuals who frequently consume heavily browned, charred, or repeatedly reheated poultry tend to show higher rates of certain cancers, particularly colorectal cancer. Researchers believe this association is largely explained by the increased formation of HCAs and other oxidation products created during repeated exposure to high temperatures. Another important group of compounds forms at the same time. As fats inside chicken undergo oxidation, they produce byproducts such as malondialdehyde and 4-hydroxynonenal. Both have attracted considerable attention because they promote oxidative stress throughout the body. Oxidative stress occurs when unstable molecules called free radicals outnumber the body's natural antioxidant defenses. Over time, this imbalance can damage proteins, cell membranes, and DNA, creating an environment that supports chronic inflammation. Scientists increasingly recognize chronic inflammation as one of the key biological conditions that allows cancer to develop and progress. Several epidemiological studies have also reported associations between frequent consumption of repeatedly heated meat products and an increased risk of pancreatic cancer, one of the deadliest forms of the disease due to its tendency to remain undetected until advanced stages. While many factors contribute to pancreatic cancer, dietary exposure to oxidation products remains an active area of research that continues to produce important findings. Fortunately, the practical solution is neither difficult nor expensive. Whenever possible, prepare only the amount of chicken your household is likely to consume in one meal. If leftovers are unavoidable, allow the meat to cool promptly, refrigerate it safely, and try to eat it cold in salads, sandwiches, or wraps, rather than heating it repeatedly. If warming is necessary, use the lowest effective temperature and avoid allowing the meat to become browned or overcooked for a second time. Gentle reheating produces fewer oxidation products than intense heat. The goal is not to eliminate chicken from your diet. In fact, fresh, properly prepared chicken remains an excellent source of high-quality protein. The objective is simply to reduce unnecessary exposure to compounds that science suggests may become problematic after repeated heating. Small adjustments like these may seem insignificant from one meal to the next, but health is often shaped by thousands of seemingly ordinary decisions accumulated over many years. The third food on this list surprises even people who pay close attention to nutrition. It is spinach, along with other nitrate-rich leafy vegetables such as Swiss chard, celery, beet greens, and lettuce. These vegetables are consistently praised by physicians, cardiologists, and cancer specialists because they are packed with vitamins, minerals, fiber, and natural antioxidants. Fresh spinach supports healthy blood pressure, contributes to cardiovascular health, and provides nutrients that help protect cells from everyday oxidative damage. In its natural state, it deserves every bit of its healthy reputation. The concern begins only after the vegetable has been cooked, stored, and reheated. Many families prepare large batches of cooked greens to save time during the week, believing they are making one of the healthiest choices possible. Unfortunately, the chemistry of these vegetables changes during refrigeration in ways that most people have never been taught to recognize. Spinach naturally contains high levels of nitrates, and under normal circumstances, these compounds are not harmful. In fact, dietary nitrates can improve blood vessel function and support healthy circulation. The problem develops during storage. As cooked spinach sits in the refrigerator, naturally occurring bacteria begin converting nitrates into nitrites. This conversion is part of a normal biological process and occurs without any obvious change in appearance or taste. When the spinach is later reheated, those nitrites can react further under the influence of heat and digestive conditions, leading to the formation of compounds known as nitrosamines. Nitrosamines are among the best-studied dietary carcinogens in modern toxicology. Decades of laboratory research have demonstrated their ability to damage DNA and initiate cancer in experimental models, while population studies have linked high nitrosamine exposure with increased risks of cancers affecting the stomach, esophagus, and colon. These findings explain why international food safety authorities have closely monitored dietary nitrate and nitrite exposure for many years. Their concern is not with fresh vegetables themselves, but with the chemical transformations that can occur after cooking, storage, and reheating. The irony is difficult to ignore. One of the healthiest vegetables available can become significantly less desirable simply because of the way it is handled after cooking. That does not mean spinach should be removed from your diet. On the contrary, it remains one of the most nutrient-dense foods you can eat. The safer approach is to prepare it fresh whenever possible and enjoy it immediately after cooking. If leftovers remain, eating them cold is generally preferable to reheating them again. When storage cannot be avoided, keeping cooked spinach in an airtight container, limiting refrigeration time, and avoiding repeated heating may help reduce the chemical changes associated with nitrosamine formation. These recommendations are simple, yet they reflect an important lesson that applies to many foods. The nutritional value of a meal depends not only on what you cook, but also on how you store it and how many times you expose it to heat afterwards. By now, a clear pattern is beginning to emerge. Whether we are talking about rice, chicken, or leafy greens, the problem is rarely the food itself. Instead, it is the repeated cycle of cooking, cooling, storing, and reheating that creates conditions for new chemical reactions to occur. Some reactions involve bacterial toxins, others involve oxidation, while still others produce compounds capable of interacting directly with DNA. Individually, each exposure may appear insignificant. Collectively, however, repeated exposure over many years may contribute to the gradual biological changes associated with chronic disease. That is why understanding food chemistry is so important. It allows us to enjoy nutritious foods while avoiding unnecessary risks created not by the ingredients themselves, but by the way they are prepared. In the next section, we will examine the fourth and final food on this list. It is one that almost everyone believes is completely safe to reheat, yet modern research suggests it deserves far more caution than most people realize. The final food on this list may be the most unexpected of all because it is one of the few foods almost every nutrition expert agrees deserves a place in a healthy diet. Eggs are often described as nature's perfect package of nutrition. They contain all 9 essential amino acids, making them a complete protein. They are rich in choline, a nutrient that supports brain development and nervous system function, while also providing selenium, vitamin B12, vitamin D, lutein, and zeaxanthin, nutrients that contribute to immune health, eye protection, and antioxidant defense. For decades, eggs have been recommended to children, athletes, older adults, and anyone looking for an affordable source of high-quality nutrition. Freshly prepared eggs remain an excellent food choice. The concern begins only after they have been cooked, chilled, and exposed to high temperatures once again. Surprisingly few people realize that the fats and cholesterol inside egg yolks undergo important chemical changes during repeated heating. These changes are invisible to the eye and impossible to detect by taste, yet they have attracted growing attention from researchers studying nutrition, inflammation, and cancer biology. When eggs are cooked for the first time, the heat naturally changes the structure of both the proteins and fats. This is expected and helps improve digestibility. During refrigeration, however, those fats are exposed to oxygen for hours or even days. Once reheated, oxidation accelerates dramatically. Scientists refer to this process as secondary lipid oxidation. As it progresses, several byproducts begin to appear, including malondialdehyde and a group of compounds called oxysterols. Oxysterols are oxidized forms of cholesterol that form when foods containing cholesterol are repeatedly exposed to heat. Over the past decade, researchers have devoted increasing attention to these molecules because laboratory studies suggest they may influence inflammation, damage cell membranes, and interfere with normal DNA function. Reviews published in leading toxicology journals have described oxysterols as possessing pro-inflammatory, cytotoxic, and genotoxic properties. The term genotoxic is particularly important because it refers to substances capable of damaging the genetic material inside cells. DNA damage is one of the earliest steps involved in the development of many forms of cancer. Although the human body has remarkable repair systems, repeated exposure to DNA-damaging compounds may gradually overwhelm those natural defenses, especially when combined with other lifestyle and environmental risk factors. Repeated heating also affects the proteins found in eggs. During a second round of intense heating, particularly inside microwave ovens, egg proteins can become excessively denatured. They form tighter crosslinks that make them more difficult for digestive enzymes to break apart. This does not necessarily make the eggs dangerous, but it does reduce some of their nutritional quality while increasing digestive stress. Researchers have also investigated what happens to sulfur-containing amino acids such as cysteine and methionine during repeated heating. These amino acids can degrade into compounds that contribute to oxidative stress within the digestive tract. Oxidative stress is essentially an imbalance between harmful free radicals and the body's antioxidant protection. When this imbalance persists over long periods, the lining of the intestines may experience repeated microscopic injury. Chronic inflammation of the intestinal lining has long been recognized as one of the biological conditions associated with colorectal cancer, which remains one of the most commonly diagnosed cancers worldwide. Once again, no single reheated breakfast is likely to determine a person's future health. The concern lies in repeated exposure over months, years, and decades. Fortunately, the solution is remarkably simple. Eggs are best enjoyed soon after cooking. If you prepare hard-boiled eggs in advance, leave the shells on during refrigeration and eat them cold whenever possible. Scrambled eggs, omelets, and similar dishes should ideally not be reheated in the microwave, where uneven heating can create extremely hot areas that accelerate oxidation. If warming is absolutely necessary, gentle methods such as a low-temperature oven or a warm water bath expose the eggs to less thermal stress. The goal is not perfection but reduction. Every small improvement in food preparation can reduce unnecessary exposure to compounds that scientific research continues to investigate. Freshly cooked eggs remain among the healthiest foods available. It is repeated high-temperature reheating, not the eggs themselves, that deserves greater caution. As I reviewed the scientific literature surrounding reheated foods, one feeling stood out more than any other. It was not fear, it was frustration. None of this information is hidden away in secret laboratories or unavailable to the public. The studies exist in respected, peer-reviewed journals. Public health organizations, food safety agencies, and scientific institutions have discussed these mechanisms for years. Yet somehow this knowledge rarely reaches ordinary families. Most people have never been taught that the chemistry of food continues changing long after dinner has ended. They are not making poor choices because they are careless or irresponsible. They simply have not been given information that could help them make better decisions. Every day, parents pack lunches containing reheated rice or vegetables for their children. Older adults living alone warm yesterday's chicken because it is convenient and economical. Athletes carefully prepare meals filled with lean protein and vegetables, convinced they are following the healthiest possible routine. None of these people intend to increase their long-term exposure to harmful compounds. They are acting on the information they have, and until now, that information has often been incomplete. That is exactly why discussions like this matter. The purpose is never to make people afraid of ordinary foods or to convince them that every reheated meal is dangerous. Fear is not useful. Knowledge is. When people understand the science behind everyday habits, they gain the ability to make small adjustments that may benefit their health over the course of a lifetime. The relationship between food and disease is rarely simple. Cancer develops through a complex interaction of genetics, environment, lifestyle, and diet. No single ingredient determines your future, just as no single healthy meal guarantees perfect health. What matters most is the overall pattern of choices repeated consistently over many years. Understanding which foods tolerate reheating well and which undergo more significant chemical changes is simply another piece of that larger picture. Prevention often depends not on dramatic changes, but on countless ordinary decisions that seem almost insignificant in the moment. Now that we have examined all 4 foods, a clear pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Rice presents concerns related to bacterial toxins and the formation of acrylamide. Chicken undergoes protein and fat oxidation that may produce heterocyclic amines and other reactive compounds. Leafy greens rich in nitrates can generate nitrosamines after storage and reheating. Eggs experience cholesterol oxidation and secondary lipid oxidation that create oxysterols and other byproducts under repeated heat exposure. Although the specific chemistry differs from one food to another, the underlying mechanisms repeat themselves again and again. Oxidation, nitrosamine formation, protein modification, bacterial activity. These are not theories invented to create alarming headlines. They are biological processes that have been investigated repeatedly through laboratory experiments, epidemiological research, and decades of nutritional science. Understanding them allows us to approach our kitchens with greater awareness instead of blind routine. The encouraging news is that reducing these risks does not require expensive supplements, complicated diets, or eliminating your favorite foods. In most cases, simple habits provide the greatest benefit. Preparing smaller portions reduces the amount of leftover food in the first place. Cooling cooked meals promptly slows bacterial growth. Refrigerating foods quickly and consuming them within recommended time frames helps preserve quality. Avoiding repeated reheating limits the formation of oxidation products and other undesirable compounds. Choosing gentle reheating methods instead of exposing foods to intense temperatures can further reduce unnecessary chemical changes. These recommendations are practical because they fit naturally into everyday life. They are based not on fear, but on the principle that preventing disease often begins with understanding how ordinary habits influence long-term health. As we reach the end of this discussion, the most important message is not that you should fear leftovers or stop eating nutritious foods. The real takeaway is that how you store and reheat food can be just as important as the food itself. Modern research continues to show that repeated high-temperature reheating can trigger chemical changes that increase the formation of compounds linked to oxidative stress, inflammation, and DNA damage. While no single meal will determine your future health, the small choices you make every day can add up over the years. Prevention is rarely about one dramatic decision. It is built on consistent, informed habits. Let's quickly recap the 4 foods we covered. Cooked rice can become risky when bacterial toxins develop during storage, and repeated heating may also increase acrylamide formation. Cooked chicken is more likely to produce heterocyclic amines and oxidation byproducts when exposed to high heat a second time. Spinach and other nitrate-rich leafy greens may generate nitrosamines after refrigeration and reheating. Eggs, especially scrambled or fried eggs, can develop oxidized cholesterol compounds and additional lipid oxidation products when repeatedly heated. Although each food follows a different chemical pathway, they all point to one important lesson. Repeated heating changes food at the molecular level, even when nothing looks or tastes different. Fortunately, protecting yourself doesn't require expensive products or complicated diets. Cook only what you need whenever possible. Cool leftovers quickly, refrigerate them without delay, and avoid reheating the same meal more than once. If you do need to warm food, use gentle heat instead of exposing it to extremely high temperatures. Freshly prepared meals remain the best option, while leftovers should be handled carefully and eaten within a safe time frame. These are simple habits that can help reduce unnecessary exposure to potentially harmful compounds without making your daily routine difficult. If one food surprised you more than the others, let me know in the comments below. Was it rice, chicken, spinach, or eggs? And if there is another food you regularly reheat that you'd like me to research, leave it in the comments as well. Your questions often inspire future videos, and I genuinely enjoy exploring the latest scientific evidence on topics that matter to everyday life. If you found this video informative, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone you care about. A simple share could help a friend or family member make healthier choices without changing their entire lifestyle. Knowledge is one of the most powerful tools in preventive medicine, and sometimes the smallest pieces of information have the greatest long-term impact. Finally, a quick reminder. This video is intended for educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for personalized medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Scientific understanding continues to evolve, and recommendations may change as new high-quality research becomes available. If you have specific health concerns or medical conditions, always consult your physician or a qualified healthcare professional before making significant changes to your diet. Thank you for watching. Stay curious, stay informed, and remember, better health often begins with the everyday choices we make in our own kitchens. Until next time, take care.